Hello, everyone. I am so super excited today to bring a bright light of sunshine to you, Kevin Smith. If you don't know Kevin, you're certainly get to learn about him today. He is the founder and chief kindness chaser of Kindness Worldwide, and he's the executive vice president wealth management at Smith Wealth Advisory Group. And he is just making a huge difference across the globe, spreading kindness and goodness. And thank you so much, Kevin, for being here today to, at this time of year around the holidays can be so difficult for so many people. So thank you for being here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're passionate about?
Well, thank you, Gina. It's great to be here and such an honor to be with such a special friend.
Thank you.
One of the many blessings of this journey is making countless new friends, and you're amongst them. In fact, I
Yeah.
have a special announcement to make here.
Oh, whoa.
So, as you know, and she mentioned, I'm the founder of the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide, which has a vision to achieve a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. And we have many ambassadors who help us in that mission and that vision. And I've been waiting to pick the right time to make this announcement. I know we've talked about it, but I am very pleased to announce to your audience our newest Kindness Worldwide Global Ambassador, which is you.
Oh, thank you so much. What an awesome way to announce it. Thank you, Kevin. I am so honored to
What you
be a kindness ambassador because you know what? It's not just something that you live and are and do, right? It's not something
absolutely
that's add on. It's not an add on. It's just being who you are.
being who you are, and you exude kindness in everything you do and all your interactions. I knew that from the first moment I met you, and just what you've done in creating a culture of kindness in your organization. And it's just been inspirational to me. And so
Aw,
there'll be a press release and all that, but I thought, what better way to
aw,
announce your ambassadorship than on your own show? In fact, I would suggest that I would
yeah.
welcome all of your viewers who are watching to just put in the comments all the reasons why Gina makes such a difference and how she exudes kindness.
Aw.
And I have a feeling we're going to be scrolling for a long time.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, I am on board with your mission. And so why don't you share with everyone what your mission is and your passion that, we're all part of?
Well, I've always lived my life, Gina, with a
Mm,
belief that the meaning of life is to live it in a way to make a meaningful difference.
mm,
And I've applied that value in my career. As you mentioned, I founded Smith Wealth Advisory Group. It's very meaningful to me to help others and to translate their monetary resources into meaningful life experiences. And this took on an entirely new meaning on Good Friday morning, 2023. I was a beneficiary of an act of kindness and in an innocent endeavor to simply acknowledge this Good Samaritan woman, pay it forward in a more meaningful way.
mm,
It became something so much more. It became about making a meaningful difference and actually inspired me to form the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide.
mm.
And it's just been one of the most indescribable, meaningful adventures of a lifetime, impossible to put into words. But again, all about making a difference. That's my
Yeah.
passion, and just everything I try to do each day is just to be the best version of myself I can possibly be, and hopefully inspire others. But it's all about making a difference, making a positive impact.
I love that. I just finished my book, and one of the chapters I write about finding your love language, and I really feel like making a difference is the light inside of you that is your love language. Like when you think about making a difference, it just makes you feel incredible. And I can just tell that when I talk to you, and the fact that that person returned your wallet and gave that back to you just opened the doors, and just is opening so many people's doors to just give back and spread the light. So that is amazing. Thank you so much for that.
No, absolutely. Well, I've always felt that when you do something for others, and I've kind of jokingly said this, but I think the being selfless is the
Mm,
most selfish thing one can do. And the reason I say that is that when you generally do for others and kind of go the extra mile, so to speak, to make a difference in your communities or in the lives of others, it just comes back. The boomerang effect of that, and what the recipient of an act of kindness, what that does for you. Like I was a beneficiary of an act of kindness, last Good Friday morning, but it's also what the giver of that act of kindness does and what they get back. And I think I would argue the giver gets back so much more than the receiver, just in terms of the meaning and just that validation that, look, every life matters, and everyone has the ability to make a difference in their own ways.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when that happens, you actually release neurotransmitters that release dopamine and other goodness and chemicals that make you feel better. So, one of the things that happens when we're on this trajectory of doing and living our dream and acting out our love language is sometimes there's hurdles. They can come at any moment, anytime. We've all experienced them, and the life itself is full of hurdles. This is not like every day you wake up and it's sunshine and roses, because there's hurdles. Can you talk to that or share a story about hurdles and like maybe how that maybe put roadblocks, or how you overcame those to continue moving towards your passion?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Honestly, Gina, every day there's roadblocks. And I think back and reflect back over the last 19 months since this journey began for me on Good Friday morning, 2023, where again, I just simply wanted to acknowledge this young woman in a more meaningful way. And it opened up a pathway to, bring people and communities together more broadly. And I started to see, this opportunity, had, this vision of what I felt was possible and what I knew was possible. And I would day after day, I was trying to share with others what I felt, what I could see, and hoping others would kind of enter the arena with me to be part of this vision, part of this mission of what I knew was possible. And, day after day, meeting after meeting. And, some people like kind of saw some of it, but it was impossible. Like, I wish the ability of osmosis, I could just get everyone to see what I could see. Right. Because I knew.
Yes.
And, but it was almost like, I call it the loneliest journey. It's very meaningful, but the loneliest journey, because I just wanted others to enter the arena with me, to do what I knew, do it together, and have really someone there, right there in the trenches with me. And, for the longest time, it was an uphill battle, and there was a lot of skeptics, a lot of cynics, people who didn't believe what I was trying to attempt was possible. And that can weigh on you. A lot of the negativity, a lot of the doubters, the cynics. And if we're not careful, if we listen to the language of others, and some of that can be very negative language, if you start believing what others think, then you succumb to their energy. And what matters is belief in yourself, and never doubting, never questioning, and just passioning forward. But I think every day we come across our own roadblocks, our own skeptics, and sometimes that skeptic can be our own self-talk. It's just passioning forward, and just that's really, to me, is what's been the driver, is just believing in something bigger than me, knowing that there's others who share that vision as well. And now, after all this time, people like you and others are, in the trenches, in the arena. We're on together and doing something very magical together.
Yeah, I think it's critical to remember that sometimes you are your own critic, but when you surround yourself with like people who have similar visions, they can help you get out of those thought patterns. If you're having trouble with your own thought patterns, it's having a conversation, connecting with someone, because those connections can really uplift you and change the whole direction of your day. And I think about like what makes me happy on a daily basis when there's hurdles. Can you share with everyone like what makes you happy? What like is it that keeps you moving towards this passion that you have?
Well, I think just life perspective, and I think especially as I get older, just more appreciative of the gift we are afforded in each and every day. Every day is a gift and a blessing. And yes, we all have our bad moments and life experiences, and bad things happen. But it's just mindful kindness. My friends at Kinder Foundation, they refer to it as mindful kindness. I call it kindfulness. It's just making kindness top of mind in my daily life and routine, trying to find opportunities to, be the good by seeing the good in others, acknowledging them, and just doing acts of kindness and being the best version of myself I can possibly be. Every moment, every day. I think positive energy begets positive energy. It can become contagious, just like negative energy can be. But just to be positive, again, to see the good, be the good, and go the extra mile, so to speak, and just being kind.
I think seeing the good is so critical, because it's so easy to be judgmental and see the bad. but it's difficult to sometimes see the good. And so I think that's something, especially at organizations, if you're approaching a conversation and you're bringing the negativity, it's recognizing that, instead bring the good, because there's always good in every situation that you can find, right? I mean, there's something that you can find in everything you do.
Absolutely. And I think I would suggest, and I've lived this through my personal experience in this journey, is that there's a lot of negativity out there, and all you have to do is turn on the news, and the vast majority of the
Right.
news is negative. And I would argue that the positive news is just as newsworthy as the negative news, but it's disproportionately shown. And I was kind of caught up in that, being conditioned to kind of see the bad because of all the negativity and being frustrated by things that are happening, feeling like you're powerless doing about it. But the reality of it is, in my case, this act of kindness essentially snapped me out of a subconscious trance. It made me look and realize that, look, the good is the norm. There's good and kindness everywhere. All we need to do is open our eyes to see it, to see the good. And yes, bad things happen, but they don't need to define us. They can refine us, but there is good and kindness everywhere. It's just our mindset and being aware of it.
Yeah. Is this something that, Kevin, that you learned, or was it something, an experience? Like, where did this come from? Is it something foundational that you read, or like an experience, or what idea, or where did this come from? Did it just happen one day, like this idea and your passion, or did you learn something that made you kind of focus this way?
Well, I think I've always been a glass half full person by nature.
Mm.
Trying to see the good and not get caught up in the bad. But what I wasn't realizing, and my
Hmm.
wife would tell me, Kevin, you're watching the news too much. And look, there's a lot
Oh,
of things in recent years. We've had COVID that was very divisive, divisive
gosh.
political campaigns, and there's so much that divides us. And it's easy to get caught up in that instead of focusing that there's far more that unites us
Mm.
than the opposite. But I was watching the news every day on my Twitter feed all throughout the day. And without me even realizing it, despite the by nature positive person I am, I was getting conditioned and caught up in all that and being very, very frustrated.
Mm.
And it was weighing on me without me even realizing it. And when I say that this act of kindness essentially kind of snapped me out of it, I
Mm.
think it's very, very true, because often we're unaware of what we watch, what we read, and even our interactions at times. It's either reinforcing the good, or it can be conditioning us and reinforcing the bad. And for me, despite that my upbringing and just by being glass half full by nature, I found myself, without realizing it, getting caught up in that glass empty world. And now it's all, there's roses everywhere again. Abraham Lincoln once said, he said, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, but we can rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. And, it's all your perspective, but there's roses everywhere. We just need to open our eyes to see them.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the news, because it's been a few years since I haven't watched the news on TV probably since COVID, but like even reading the news, like I read professional journals and science and scientific articles. It's not that I'm ignorant about what's going on, because I'm really hyper aware, but the whole thing about crafting media is to get your attention. The first step of learning is to get your attention. And the thing is, it's trying to get your attention in a way that's not positive. And so you're exactly right. Being aware that that's what's going on, and it's releasing cortisol and it's creating anxiety, is that reinforces that behavior, so that you're addicted for that behavior. And so it's hard to put your phone down. It's hard to not look at it. So you have to look at things like doing a gratitude journal, or like you said, getting out and doing something good, seeing the good, going out and looking at the moon. The moon last night, Kevin, was incredible. And here in Charleston, I don't know if you saw it, but it was incredible. But it's like taking the time, to think about those opportunities and making the time. So this season on my podcast, I've really been focused on this concept of winning. And so the idea of winning to me, as a former Division I athlete, means something. But on a daily basis, I think about, what does winning mean? If someone were to ask you, what does winning mean to you, what would you say?
Well, I would argue that winning, at least to me, is just being the best version of yourself you can possibly be each and every day.
Aw.
But also I think, winning, there's healthy competition and there's
Mhm.
unhealthy competition. And so often we think of winning by definition, there's a winner and there's a loser.
Mm.
Well, with kindness, as my friend Dr. Ilya Gagoris often says, with kindness, everybody wins. And so I think just this mindset of a we mentality versus a me mentality, and instead of focus on, there has to be a winner and a loser. Why can't, in our own way, we're all winners in our own way. And each and every day, we should just have a winning day by being the best version of ourselves we can be, and really being reflective and self-aware of ourselves, and not comparing ourselves to others.
Right.
Look, you can compare all day, and we're all going to say, well, this person has this person's that. You know what? Be the best version of you with whatever gifts and talents you have, and that's all we should expect, and that's enough. And so that's, to me, what winning's about. Just, being the best I can be, and hopefully inspiring others by my example to be the best versions they can be too.
I love that. That's going to be the title of this podcast for sure. Be the best that you can be. See the good. See the good, be the good. That could be the title too, because a lot of times we're so, like you said, we're our harshest critics.
You bet.
And so you have to see the good in yourself. And I think that's so important.
Well, and you touched on it earlier. I mean, about there's brain science about
yes,
and Dr. Jen Fraser and many others have done groundbreaking work in this area. And when you're kind, you live longer. You actually have better health. It reduces healthcare costs. It increases productivity in the workplace. I mean, you know this because you've created that culture in your own workplace, right? You lead by your example. But there's actually science that shows, being kind is not just a nice thing to do. It's actually the healthiest thing you can do for your own well-being.
Right.
And, so that's a whole other aspect of this. But you're right. I mean, watching the news, I'm aware of it now. And so I'm not going to let the news, I'm aware of it. I'm not going to be obsessed with it because I'm now aware of the game, and I'm not going to participate in that anymore. I choose not to. Because I know if like many of us do, we get caught up in the news flow, it's going to get me back into that other world that I was in that I'll never want to return to.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think of this idea of being kind to yourself, like really involves forgiveness, like forgiving yourself for those times and giving yourself empathy and grace, so that you don't feel guilty about it. Like if you do look at it, but it's understanding, like you said, being aware how it impacts you, being hyper aware of how it makes you feel. And I think that's so important.
Forgiveness is one of the 8 characteristics of kindness. And as
Yes.
you know, on this journey, I try to think, what does kindness really mean? We know kind of what it is, how we feel, but let's break it down. And I identified 8 characteristics, maybe more, but I felt there was 8 that spoke to me. And it begins with gratitude and patience. Forgiveness, empathy, and compassion, which are different, but I kind of lump them together in one. Respect, joy, generosity, and service.
I love that.
So
that's why we did the challenge. Like was eight challenges on my social media, but you did 8 weeks in the Kindness Worldwide organization. But kindness doesn't stop. It's beautiful in Charleston because they have these signs, Kevin, that all around the community. One of them is hope, one of them is joy, and one of them is love. And I love taking pictures of them and visiting them just because you can be in peace in that moment of gratitude. But kindness doesn't end. We did 8, you did 8 weeks, but this is something that we always have to think about. And last week I had Connie Miller on my podcast. She is the founder of Happiness Coaching for Parents. And gosh, parents have a lot on their plate. A lot of people have a lot on their plate, but parents, she offered a lot of great suggestions for parents who are high performing and, they're hard on themselves because they're hard on themselves and they have to provide strategies for their children. And well, she asked me to ask you this question. So she saw that you had a finance background and also you have the Kindness Foundation. And so she asked these 2 questions. How do you navigate the structure of finance world and the emotional experience of being human? In other words, how do you bring those 2 worlds together in a meaningful way? Because they don't seem like finance and kindness. How do they fit?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, my belief system is I believe the meaning of life is to live it in a way to make a meaningful difference. And with my wealth management practice, I generally feel like I make my living by making a difference. My favorite quote among them, well, my favorite quote, Karen Samuelson, is "Be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people." Love that quote. But on the wealth management side, Henry David Thoreau once said, "Wealth is the ability to fully experience life."
Okay.
And so we often think of wealth in monetary terms, and yes, that's a part of it. But if you think about what Henry David Thoreau said, it's not what you have in monetary resources, it's how do we translate those monetary resources into meaningful life experiences? Maybe it's retiring comfortably. Maybe it's educating your children and grandchildren to give them promising futures. Maybe it's endowing a legacy to your family or causes that are important to you. So for me, on the wealth management side, I do that every day. It's helping clients take their monetary resources, have meaningful life experiences, help them fully experience life. Very, very meaningful to me. But now applying that on Kindness Worldwide side, making a meaningful difference, obviously opening up the door more broadly. I mean, our vision is literally to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. It's called Worldwide for a reason, right? And so to me, it's all one the same. It's all back to my belief system, making a meaningful difference in my day job, so to speak, / passion. That's how I do it there. And now in this indescribable adventure of a lifetime that Kindness Worldwide has become, it's a difference more broadly and making more of a global impact.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it does fit. It's clear. It's so clear. So next week, Deborah Cryer is going to be on my podcast. Next Thursday, we're going to be back at the regular time at 2 Eastern next week. She is a cancer advocate. She actually has a podcast where she empowers cancer survivors and entrepreneurs of taking charge of the things they can control of their life. Because if you have cancer, you have an invisible illness, like I described in the book chapter I wrote, you can't control those things. So she tries to empower them for things they can control. So Kevin, what question should we ask Deb next Thursday?
Well, one that comes to mind would be, in the midst of facing so much adversity, as she clearly has in confronting cancer, what is your secret to seeing the good and staying positive in such difficult circumstances?
Oh, I like that question. It's really hard. You and I talked about it before we even got on the podcast today. When you're going through a storm and you're in the eye of the storm, it seems like you're not going to be able to get out. So that's an awesome question. I can't wait to talk to Deb next week. Kevin, one of the things I do at this podcast is I ask my guests to give advice. I started the podcast 2 years ago because I had truck drivers. So we train fleets and other whole organizations, but I had truck drivers telling me they were depressed. And if you think about it, this is not just specific to truck drivers. They're in the road in their minds a lot of times, especially over the road drivers. But this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially with the Surgeon General coming out and describing the loneliness epidemic that we're in. So if someone came to you in the Kindness Worldwide or even at your company and told you that they've lost their passion, maybe they've lost their passion for learning, or they really just don't know where to turn, what recommendation or suggestions would you give to them?
Well, I believe everyone has been born with natural gifts and talents and born for a purpose. And, we're all called to utilize them at different times in different ways. It doesn't have to be the big things. I'm a go big or go home kind of guy. My wife is a do small things with great love. And, we need both, right? I couldn't do what I did. But, I would say if anyone who's questioning themselves or their purpose, number one is, certainly I believe in them. We all believe in them, but it's not about what others believe. They got to believe in themselves and practice mindful kindness, self-kindness, and I'll share a brief story in that regard. I actually, in this journey, I received one of the most touching emails I've ever received. I actually mentioned this as an excerpt in my remarks in Palermo, Italy. I gave a keynote address to the General Assembly of the World Kindness Movement in October. But long story short, there was a woman who awoke on a Sunday morning in a very dark place, and she was questioning her purpose. She was dwelling on prior mistakes she had made and feeling that she had no reason left to live. She was in such a dark place, and she fully expected that day would be her last day on earth. And through fate and circumstances, she had a link to the Kindness Worldwide website and watched the video on her homepage. And that video she shared with me renewed her sense of purpose, gave her hope, reminded her that she still has every reason to live. And she's on this earth today because of this one act of kindness that spawned that video. And if that's all that ever happened from this act of kindness, that's enough. That's more than enough. But I have no doubt now that this woman is now that she has her new sense of purpose, she's going to go out in the world and going to make a difference. She's going to touch other lives, going to favorably affect their lives, or going to pay it forward. And so it just reminds us again that sometimes we can get caught up in the bad, and but there's so much good around us, and just to be aware of that all the time. There's always good in each and every one of us, to see the good, and just be reminded that we all have gifts and talents and purposes, and we may not know at what time we're supposed to utilize them, but those gifts are always there, and there will be a time and a place that they will be come out, and so I just wanted to share that because it reminded me of that, and just a touching story. Again, it's definitely something I'll never forget, and one of the top highlights of this whole experience thus far.
So beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's the whole purpose behind it. And if you're listening today and you're feeling you don't have hope or you've lost your passion, one thing you can do is, like you said in the very beginning, give. Take out a little note card and write a note to someone that you think might need that as much as you need it. Because just because you think somebody doesn't need it, you never know. Just like that woman who was in the bed, you just never know. So be the difference, see the good. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and spending this half hour with me. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you? What's the best place? Tell them about your company, or tell them about the foundation, and where they can connect with you.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so everyone's welcome to connect with me there. And Kindness Worldwide, our website's kindnessworldwide.org. There's many resources that explains our vision. There's many elements, tactical initiatives towards achieving that vision. It's not a pipe dream. It's very, very real. There's a pathway, and you, Gina, and so many others are now coalescing around this to really make an impact, to make this vision of creating a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world possible. And a community, by the way, can be a family, it can be a workplace, it can be a school, it can be a state, a country. So we can define that any way that we want, but that's the vision. And so there's resources on the website. We have a Facebook page. I need to be a little more active on Instagram. I'm a little bit behind in technology.
Me too.
Yes. So I need to find some, young student out there who's far better at this than I am. I'm a little outdated in my older age, but in any event, LinkedIn and the website, and there's email and so on. You can access me there. But happy to help in any way. I'd love for all of you to be part of this. One thing I often say, Gina, is that Kindness Worldwide is not my nonprofit; it's our nonprofit. That's how I think of it, an ecosystem model. And this story that's on the website of this act of kindness, it's a beautiful story. But this young woman, she wrote the introduction, by this act of kindness. I was inspired to write the forward, to pay it forward, so to speak. But the most beautiful part of the story is going to be what happens next, and that's going to be that we all collectively write together. And so, in any event, I appreciate your time. It's been wonderful to be here. Truly valued and blessed by our friendship, and just so happy to have you on board as a Kindness Worldwide Global Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's my pleasure. I look forward to seeing what all of us can do together to continue the movement forward.